Welcome to Hire Power, the show where we cut through the noise and get real about hiring. I'm Kim Frost, founder of Frost Connections, and after 25 plus years in the search industry, I've seen what works and what absolutely doesn't. If you're a founder, CEO, VP, or HR leader who's tired of bad hires and ready to build a team that actually fits your culture and vision, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Leadership transparency. When do you open the curtain and when you don't? Today's episode, I want to talk about leadership transparency because it's trendy to say, I'm an open book, ask me anything. But great leadership isn't about being an open book. It's about being a disciplined communicator. Harvard Business Review has written extensively about transparency, how it builds trust, how it strengthens teams, and how it can also backfire when used without judgment. Transparency isn't about saying everything. That's where we make a mistake. It's really about saying the right things at the right time in the right way. And honestly, I make that mistake a little more often than I care to admit. Let's break down when transparency is powerful and when it becomes dangerous. So here's when it's essential. There are moments in leadership when transparency isn't optional, it's required. It's essential when, one, you're navigating change. So restructures, strategy shifts, leadership transitions, mergers, acquisitions, layoffs, all over the news lately. People can handle bad news. What they can't handle is uncertainty. And that is such a huge but subtle point. When leaders say nothing, employees don't assume the best, they assume the worst. For example, I had been in a situation like that. I was hired by one of my clients to manage their recruiting team. At that time, there were hate crimes happening in our city that were targeting a certain population. I had a few of those folks on my team. The CEO said nothing. So I felt the obligation to say something to acknowledge it because I felt that by not saying anything, it would be worse. And I'll be honest with you, it was challenging to bring up because, again, these hate crimes were awful. My team was scared and concerned. And also, I was addressing it from a white woman's standpoint. But we talked about it. I brought it up and I told them just like that, I want to acknowledge this. And they were so grateful that, one, I acknowledged it, but two, that we had a chance to talk about it. And I just listened. And what happened from that is we had a better relationship. We understood each other more, and they also knew that I cared. So I think about that. If I didn't say anything, what would that have said? And I'm so glad I did. So saying nothing, again, isn't always the best. Harvard Business Review research consistently shows this. Uncertainty creates more anxiety than clarity, even when the truth is hard. So here's what you do. Tell people what you know, what you don't know, and when you expect to know more. That builds credibility. It's okay if you're uncertain, but just address it. 2, when trust needs strengthening. So if your engagement is low, if turnover is high, if morale feels fragile, that's when leadership needs to pull back the curtain a bit and share business realities, strategic priorities, what pressures the company is actually facing. Because people will commit more deeply when they feel like insiders instead of outsiders. 3, when values are being tested. Transparency matters when you're showing people how decisions get made.
Why did you promote someone? Why did you change direction? Why was funding pulled from a project? Fairness isn't about outcomes. It's about understanding the why. And that why creates psychological safety. We're also getting into a leadership era where transparency matters more than ever because AI is taking over the analytical work leaders used to own. Strategy models, dashboards, forecasts. Technology can do that now. But what AI can't do is read the room. It can't feel tension. It can't build trust. And it certainly can't help a nervous team feel grounded in uncertainty. That's where emotional intelligence becomes your competitive advantage. The best leaders don't hide their emotions and they don't ignore the emotions around them. They notice them, they name them, they get curious about them, they normalize them. If you want a more resilient, healthy, high performing team, you don't put emotions aside. That's what I learned when talking to this recruiting team. You learn how to lead through them. As AI takes over more technical tasks, your ability to navigate the emotional side of leadership isn't soft, it's strategic. Emotions aren't a weakness, they're one of your most powerful leadership advantages. When does transparency become harmful? Okay, let's flip the side of the coin because transparency can quickly turn into oversharing. I can't tell you how many professionals I work with that way overshare. And oversharing isn't about leadership. Harvard Business Review warns about this clearly. Transparency without boundaries creates fear, distraction, and instability. Here are a few moments when transparency is not appropriate. When information is speculative, leaders sometimes talk in real time as they're thinking. That can be dangerous because if you float half-formed ideas, possible restructuring, we might statement, this can create chaos because your team doesn't hear possibility, they hear certainty. And if you don't have that clarity yet, wait. When it becomes harmful, when it violates privacy or dignity. You never share individual performance issues with others, personal details, health situations, or compensation specifics. Transparency should never come at the expense of human dignity or legal boundaries. Your job isn't to expose everything, it's to protect trusts. And lastly, when transparency becomes harmful is when your own anxiety leaks onto the team. And that's a big one. Some leaders are transparent as a form of emotional offloading. They vent, they worry out loud, they dump pressures onto the team. That's not transparency, that's emotional outsourcing. Yes, we are all human, and yes, we need that vehicle, that area to offload. But as I like to say, read your room. Is it appropriate to tell people that you lead and or manage? Because your team should feel grounded, safe, and oriented, not your burdens with your stress. There's a difference between transparent and reckless. So here's the leadership sweet spot. You can be transparent without being destabilizing. Strong leaders ask themselves 3 questions before they share. 1, is this information helpful or harmful right now? 2, does it create clarity or confusion? And 3, am I sharing this to serve my team or to relieve myself? That's the discipline of leadership. And as I always say, two things. The higher you climb the ladder, the lonelier it is. And two, leadership can often be misunderstood. The one truth, though, that we can consistently point to is the most trusted leaders aren't the most talkative ones. They are the most intentional communicators. Oh my God, there's so much truth to that. That could be a whole other episode. But again, I like to say, as we reference, we have two ears, one mouth. Leaders, what do? They filter, they frame, they time it well, and they don't lie. But they also don't dump the truth without structure either. Here's the real takeaway. Transparency isn't about telling people everything. It's about helping people feel respected, informed, and safe. Good leaders don't hide, but they also don't flood. They share it with purpose. So before you quote here, just be real, unquote, with your team, ask yourself, is this going to make them clearer, stronger, more grounded, or more anxious? That's the difference between leadership and noise. Leadership transparency and emotional intelligence are naturally connected. Transparency without emotional intelligence equals chaos, oversharing, and instability. Emotional intelligence without transparency equals artificial harmony and avoidance. But together, they equal trust, clarity, and psychological safety. And as AI takes over analytical tasks, the human edge of leadership isn't IQ, it's EQ. That's exactly where transparency lives. AI will do the logic, AI will do the modeling, AI will do pattern recognitions. Humans must do meaning, emotion, and trust. And that's where you won't be replaced by AI. So if you're leading people, this week's challenge is look at one conversation you've been avoiding and handle it with clarity and care. That's real transparency. That's real leadership.
That's it for this episode of Higher Power. If you're ready to hire smarter, connect with me at frostconnections.com or at LinkedIn at Kim Frost. And if you've got something to say about today's episode, follow the show and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, hire smart, lead better, and remember, how you hire is who you become. See you next week. No fluff, just better hires.